Okay, welcome to Chapter 3. Now, this is one of those ones that's got a heck of a lot of hands-on components to it because we're actually going to install Windows Server on our machines. Okay, so starting on page 41, learning objectives. Understanding the install process, yeah. Understanding the various install methods. We're only going to use one, thank goodness. And so starting up, page 30, understanding the install, verification, initial configuration. So there's some partitioning schemes you have to be aware of. For example, the old style scheme was called the legacy BIOS, right? The basic input-output system that was embedded in a chip in your motherboard. Okay, and it used a thing called a master boot record. The problem was one sector on the disk was typically 512 bytes, and that's just not enough to do too much. So it was limited the number of partition slots you could have, a total of 4. And it uses a technique called logical block addressing, LBA, which means the biggest thing you could have was 2 terabytes. And again, that's just not real anymore. So they came up with the UEFI, Unified Extensible Firmware Interface. So almost every machine, if you're buying a new machine anytime in the last 6 years, for sure, you got a UEFI BIOS. And it uses something instead of calling an MBR, it have a GUID partition table. GUID stands for Globally Unique ID. And then this is required, the whole concept of EUFI is required for the Microsoft Secure Boot feature, which is cool. Nobody could walk up to your server, punch a thumb drive in, hit the button, and boot the machine up because it could have a secure boot requirement. And then media options. So on page 43, they basically, the old style was DVD, right? You bought a DVD from the store or downloaded an ISO file from, something like that. But now it's just very rarely done that way. Normally, I bought a machine not too long ago, and it came with a USB flash drive that had the recovery media on it. Cool. So USB flash drives are kind of cool, and even if you didn't get one, you could still, for example, go to Microsoft, download the ISO file, and then use Microsoft's own media creation tool to build the ISO file, right? Okay, and it can put it directly onto a thumb drive, and then you plug it in your machine. That's probably the preferred way of doing it. If I had a server, I pretty much will guarantee you, if you bought a server today, it is not going to come with a DVD drive. So if you don't have that, well, you download the ISO and use a tool called Rufus. Maybe you've heard of that before. Rufus is a tool specifically designed for just, get down here. Well, I didn't think about the Microsoft version. Is it in the store? Oh, I didn't know it was in the store. Anyway, remember I just talked about a server doesn't have store, so you'd have to go to the real honest-to-God company to get this. And it basically, you give it an ISO file, and it makes a bootable drive for you. Kind of cool. All right. And then, of course, the third one is something that you probably have never run across unless you work in a company, is a network boot. You can configure your individual clients to run what's called a PXE boot, PXE, pre-execution environment, PE boot disk. And the way that works is I would have a PXE boot server somewhere local. And this is how, here's how you would normally do it in the corporate world. You'd have a PXE server sitting there. We had the image of your Windows 11 machines that you just bought. Everything installed the way you wanted, configured the way you wanted, everything perfect. But you went to Dell, and Dell sent you a shipment of 50 PCs, and they came in cardboard boxes. What you do is you take them out of the cardboard box, plug in the power and the network. You don't even need the rest of it. You don't need a monitor, mouse, keyboard. Turn it on. It's going to find the PXE server and install the software for you. And you can just line them up in the room, right? Just take them out of the cardboard box, line them up, then line them all up. And when one finishes, you take it and put it back in the box and take another one out of the box. So PXE Boot's pretty cool. We're going to do something kind of sort of similar to that. Okay, and then there's some advanced startup options on page 43. So remember how in Windows 10 you could hit F8 and it would come up and say, hey, what would you like to boot off of? Would you like to boot off of this or that and the other, USB or flash, CD-ROM, Unfortunately, Windows Server doesn't do that. They figure that's too insecure for someone to walk in the computer room, stick a USB drive in and boot the machine up, press 8 and boot off of their thing. So that's just not something to do. Instead, you have to go through this little routine where you go to the start, the gear and update, security, recovery, and then you could pick, restart now, and you have some choices, restore from a WIM image, and we're going to do that. Well, we're not going to do the restore, but we're going to create one. That's the WIM image is the thing that you put like in a Pixie boot. Okay, cool. Command prompt are, something about the startup settings, like booting in the safe mode, and that's where you basically tell it, okay, here's where I want to boot off of a different media type. Okay, and by the way, if you ever get to that recovery mode where you say I want to pick a thing, the only way out is to reboot. I mean, you can't say, oh, I changed my mind, I don't really want to reboot. Too bad, you're rebooting anyway. Okay, so let's talk about the Windows Server installation method. So we talked about a clean boot, which is what we're going to do. A network using the Windows WDS, which is basically the same thing we talked about with Pixie Boot. An unattended thing. This is pretty cool because if you've installed it one time, you can ask the machine to basically record your keystrokes or what questions came up during the install process, and it'll record them all. And then next time we do an install, you can just point it to this answer file, and everything goes through without you asking any. That's how you get away with an unattended install. That's why I mentioned when you lined up all the machines, you didn't have to plug in a keyboard, a mouse, or a monitor because the answer file had it all. You didn't have to do anything. Okay. And then, of course, in-place upgrades and migrations. Yay. Okay, so the next one is the installation types. So talking about container-based images, you pick a container, choose a base image, whether or not you want Windows or servers, and you do these things. And so this is designed Windows Core. All it does is just as a .NET framework. Nano, and these are for like itty bitty like embedded devices and regular Windows and regular server. So those are the types. And it's all about what APIs are available on each. And just how do you discover an image? I mean, there has to be some way that a machine, particularly an unattended machine, is going to be able to find these containers. And so, yeah, you can get them through Docker Hub, or you can get them through an image server from Microsoft. The Microsoft Container Registry, MCR. That's pretty cool. So let's just talk about the different types. The desktop experience, just like you would expect from Windows 10 or Windows 11, that's the one we're going to use. It's useful for us. It's certainly not the best option in real life. Why? I've already answered this once. It's because they're not expecting you to install anything, and they don't want any Windows components in there that are going to be stuff that you download. So for example, like, don't download Chrome. Don't do your own antivirus. Just leave it the heck alone, kind of a thing. Server Core. So Core is a whole beast. I mean, it is, without the desktop experience, when you boot the machines up, it comes up to a command prompt. And as I was mentioning before, man, oh man, changing time zones. I mean, I've done that 1,000 times. You get a brand new machine, hook it up, you have to go change the time zone. Right? I do it all the time until I got the Windows Core and went, holy hell, I have no idea. I mean, I had to go to Google. How do you change the time zone in Core? And then how do you rename the machine in Core? How do you join the domain from Core? I mean, I didn't know anything. Nothing. And so what gave me a great appreciation of this concept called PowerShell. PowerShell it's better than the command prompt. Basically, PowerShell has expanded to cover absolutely everything you could do on a machine. You can do it on the command line. It's that. I mean, it's monstrously powerful stuff. And quite frankly, I wish the university would teach an entire course just on PowerShell. It would be enough. You could fill 16 weeks worth of PowerShell scripts and all that stuff. Yeah, it might actually be a good idea. And then Nano Server. So Nano servers, they don't even have a local login at all. I mean, you connect to it remotely. It has no user, not even a command line user interface. It has no user interface whatsoever. No, so nothing. And obviously these are made for like containers and for things like, you know, an embedded device running somewhere. Now, we're going to do performing a clean install. Yeah, we're going to do that. And we use a checklist to do this. And so in supplemental materials, hang on. So in lecture notes from last week was a set of instructions. Remember, we get through all this thing and it tells you exactly step by step with what we're trying to do. So that's what we're talking about. Okay. So performing install over network. It requires a Pixie boot on the client, which if you buy a corporate designed machine, it probably has Pixie boot already in the BIOS. You may have to tweak something, but most of the time, if it's a corporate base, it's turned on automatically. Probably not your gaming rig at home. You could probably turn it on in the BIOS, but it doesn't come that way. And you need a deployment services, Windows Deployment Service, WPS, which basically is the place that holds. It's what we used to call a Pixie server. Okay, but they just call it different stuff. And then you need a boot image, a WIM. In other words, so the machine wakes up, says, I don't know who the hell I am. I have amnesia. Who can help me? So it sends out a call. Hello, is anyone out there? And the Pixie boot server or the WDS server says, oh, hey, let me assign you an IP address, and we'll get you figured all squared away. And what is it you want? Oh, I want a Windows 10 image. Okay, I'll go get that. Oh, I want a Windows 11 image. It goes to get that. And these images are called WIM files, and we're going to build one. So this still requires human intervention because the admin login is what picks the flavor of Windows, when you install this thing. Okay, so how do you get around that? Well, the unattended install, page 53, requires an answer file. And they have a thing called a Microsoft Deployment Toolkit. You could do this in Notepad, but Microsoft Deployment Toolkit's pretty cool because it basically just automates the task for you. It watches you do an install one time, and then it says, okay, got it. I recorded everything you need to know. And then you use the deployment wizard to start the process, and it can be combined. You could do a standalone and then walk around with a flash drive that has an answer file, or you could put the answer file on the Pixie server / WDS server. So either way, that way it'll get you out of the human intervention part. In-place upgrade, that's kind of simple. Instead of booting off of the media, you actually run the installer exe file off of the media. So you mount the media and then run it. Just mounts up as a drive letter, and then after that, you push the button and press the change, you're up and running. It will require a reboot, though. I mean, you don't like reboot from the don't reboot from the media. You mount the media and run it from there, because the upgrade process has to be able to see your existing systems and all the stuff that you already have installed. Because if you just boot off of the media, it's going to go, okay, dude, I guess that's what you want. Okay, so there's a choice on how much you want to keep, how much stuff you want to keep. And again, in a server environment, we're not talking about, saving your pictures and stuff, right? We're talking about applications that are already installed. So, migrating network services. So if you install operating system using one of those techniques, and then you migrate some of the roles over to another server. Now, we haven't really talked about roles that much. We have an entire thing coming up on that. But what that basically means is that this role is a print server. This machine is the web server. This means all these roles. And so if you bought a new server, set it up, wouldn't it be kind of cool if you could just move like the web server role and all of its components over to a new server? Ding! Wouldn't that be kind of cool? And this makes it incredibly easy to do those kinds of translations. Hey, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark, but the next part will be rather small.